bipartisan deal faces procedural hurdles to meet June 5 deadline. By Sabrina Siddiqui, Lindsay Wise, and Andrew Duerin. May 29, 2023, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time. Washington. President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy appeared on track to gain enough bipartisan support to suspend the debt limit, so far confining dissent to the progressive and conservative wings of their parties, but procedural choke points could still complicate the race to avoid unprecedented default. The debt ceiling agreement, which Biden and McCarthy, California, made final on Sunday, would suspend the borrowing limit for 2 years and curb government spending during that time. It would cut spending on domestic priorities favored by Democrats while boosting military spending by about 3%. It also would extend limits on food assistance to some beneficiaries to prod them to find jobs. After marathon negotiations, Biden and McCarthy spent much of the holiday weekend pitching their respective parties on the deal. White House officials canvassed Democrats on Capitol Hill to brief them about the agreement, while McCarthy promoted the bill to conservatives as a meaningful spending reform. "I feel very good about it," Biden told reporters on Monday. "There is no reason it shouldn't get done in time to avoid default," he added. In both chambers, vocal opponents of the bill could slow its passage, threatening to derail the effort to avoid unprecedented U.S. default. Some conservatives in the House and Senate have said they would oppose the deal because it doesn't go far enough to limit federal spending, while some progressives charge that the spending curbs are too steep. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said the government could run out of the cash it needs to pay its bills on time on June 5 unless Congress acts. While a failure by the U.S. to pay its bills on time could have wide-ranging consequences, the existence of an agreement would likely blunt the damage from Congress missing the deadline. At this point, markets are more likely to treat any missed payment as a blip rather than a fundamental failure by the U.S. government. During his bid to become Speaker in January, McCarthy made a series of procedural concessions to conservatives that are now complicating his ability to pass the agreement. The House won't take up the bill for a vote until Wednesday, part of an agreement McCarthy made to give lawmakers 72 hours to read the text before voting on a bill. Even before it can reach the House floor, the bill will need to pass through the House Rules Committee, a powerful panel that serves as a gatekeeper for most legislation. McCarthy appointed 3 hardline conservatives to the committee as part of his election to become Speaker. 2 of those 3 members, Reps. Ralph Norman, R.S.C., and Chip Roy, R. Texas, had indicated they will oppose the deal, which might still ultimately garner enough support to move through the Rules Committee. The panel is expected to consider the legislation on Tuesday. Roy, ahead of the meeting, said on Twitter that McCarthy had promised when he was elected Speaker to only advance legislation out of the committee because 9 Republicans and 4 Democrats if the Republicans were unanimous. A spokesman for McCarthy didn't respond to a request for comment. Traditionally in the committee, the minority, in this case the Democrats, doesn't provide any supporting votes for the majority to set the terms for considering bills on the floor. If McCarthy were to have to rely on Democratic committee votes, it could badly damage the Speaker's standing. In the narrowly divided House, McCarthy can lose no more than 4 Republican votes on the floor before needing Democratic support to pass the legislation. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, DNY, told CBS on Sunday that Republicans had committed to provide at least 150 votes in favor of the deal. Democrats would need to make up the balance to reach the 218-vote threshold typically necessary for passage. Many progressives are upset with the deal, criticizing the spending curbs for domestic programs, as well as provisions that take funding away from the Internal Revenue Service and change work requirements for food stamps. Representative Greg Casar, V. Texas, whip for the House's Progressive Caucus, called the deal a ransom payment on MSNBC on Sunday. The White House agreed to Republican demands to raise the age of people who must work in order to receive food aid through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. In an effort to make the change more palatable to Democrats, the deal would eliminate the work requirements for veterans, homeless people and young people leaving foster care, the Journal has reported. Josh Goldfein, staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society's Homeless Rights Project in New York City, said SNAP benefits were too important to have been a bargaining chip in the debt limit negotiations. There should be no limitations on access to these benefits. Biden urged Democrats to talk to him directly if they had any reservations about the bill, although he acknowledged he didn't know if progressive lawmakers would support it. Since the agreement was struck late Saturday, White House staff have held individual calls with more than 60 House Democrats and emphasized in these conversations that the compromise largely preserves domestic spending at its current levels, according to people familiar with the outreach. Some Democrats broadcast their support for the deal, including the leadership of the New Democrats, a large group of centrist House Democrats. Compromise depends on give and take, and this bill required concessions from both sides, the leaders of the group wrote in a statement on Monday afternoon. If the proposed bill does clear the House on Wednesday, it will then face a compressed timeline in the Senate where passage could take days, in part because House Republicans have expended the one opportunity they had to short-circuit the Senate's lengthy procedural hurdles. That development adds to the risk that passage could occur after the June 5 deadline. Most Senate bills are subject to two cloture votes, votes in which the Senate agrees to cut off debate, first to proceed to an up or down vote to take up a bill, and then to move to final passage. Invoking cloture requires 60 votes and can add days to the Senate process as good consideration of amendments. Senator Lindsey Graham, RSC, angry about military funding levels, tweeted Monday that he supports a short-term debt limit extension, 90 days, to renegotiate a deal he called a disaster for defense. He also said he would demand amendment votes in the Senate. The Senate can speed the process by turning to bills that are sent from the House in the form of a message. In this scenario, the Senate avoids the first cloture vote and simply proceeds to the bill. The Senate Majority Leader is then able to immediately move to the final 60-vote hurdle to end proceedings and proceed to final passage. This strips opponents of an opportunity to stop the legislation or extend the clock. The House currently has no bills that meet the requirements to be designated as a message, as it passed the only eligible bill last week. An aide to McCarthy confirmed that the debt ceiling bill wouldn't be sent to the Senate as a message. The Speaker is committed to regular order, said Representative Garrett Graves, R. Law, one of the House Republican negotiators. The Senate can speed up votes if all 100 senators agree. But Senator Mike Lee, R. Utah, Fiscal Hawk, said on Twitter Thursday that I will use every procedural tool at my disposal to impede a debt ceiling deal.